Reading The Vein of Gold, A Journey to Your Creative Heart by Julia Cameron. And I am still in the Kingdom of Story. And the actual chapter that we're reading today is called The Vein of Gold, and we're starting on page 98. I'm actually excited because I wonder why she used that particular metaphor, so I'm very curious to find out what is up with that. Okay, the vein of gold. By now, you should know yourself far better than you did at the beginning, especially if you have finished your narrative timeline and done some work with cups. What we are going to do now is play a game. It's a rather demanding game, but we have been working up to it and we are ready. The trick in working with this game is to remember to play with it as as well. The game is called The Vein of Gold. Before we go any further, I'd like to say a word about the title. I stole it. It was my privilege on two occasions to have lengthy dialogues with the late film director Martin Ritt, nearly unparalleled as an actor's director who elicited brilliant star making performances from his actors. It was a young Martin Ritt who directed young Paul Newman and Patricia Neal in HUD. It was Ritt who made Cicely Tyson a star with Sounder and who directed Norma Ray, the film that changed our impression of Sally Field from Gidget to an actress of depth and stature. Ritt had a theory about actors and brilliance. He called it the vein of gold. A grizzled, curmudgeonly man with the wrinkled mug of a prize Shar dog, Ritt sat with me for hours in a hotel suite in Chicago and later in a church basement in Canada, detailing his views. Even as we were talking, I felt as though he were handing me a creative Rosetta Stone, making me an initiate in some mystery school of the arts. He would probably find such a dramatic description so much hooey, but he broke a code for me and handed me the key to a decade of further work. This was the nub of his skills, his directing secret. All actors have a certain territory, a certain range they were born to play. I call that range their vein of gold. If you cast an actor within that vein, he will always give you a brilliant performance. Of course, you can always cast an actor outside his vein of gold. If you do, the actor can use craft and technique to give you a very fine and very creditable performance, but never a performance as brilliant as when he is working in his vein of gold. I thought of Robert De Niro and his brilliance in roles centering on the themes of male bonding, loyalties, and betrayals. Brilliant as he was always, did his roles require the love of a woman ever have the same resonance? I thought of Kevin Kline and his solid performances as a dramatic actor. Didn't they pale next to his wicked comedic skills? Wasn't comedy his vein of gold? Meryl Streep, an actress who adores comedy and plays it every turn, she gets snares us more surely in roles requiring high drama and high end drama at that. Her blue collar heroines never capture us quite as surely as her blue bloods do. We love her a little foreign and very much in jeopardy, longing for a man, not for justice. With Jodie Foster, we believe her blue collar heroines when they thirst to find justice or the killer. We have less conviction as she does that her finding the right man is the answer. None of this is to say that the actors shouldn't act just as they choose and whatever they choose. It is simply to say that Ritt was onto something when he noticed the vein of gold. As a writer slash director myself, for years after this conversation, I found my mind circling back to Ritt and his theory. Once he had placed in my head, the concept of a creative vein of gold, I saw evidence of its validity everywhere, and not just among actors. I saw evidence in those all around me that there were themes in life and in work that were simply more resonant and rewarding than others. My brother Christopher, a composer, is a piano player's piano player, but when he set sail on an old Hammond organ, his rendering of Amazing Grace is truly a spiritual experience, his vein of gold. Among my photographer friends, Mitchell Canoff is the wizard of the candid black and white street portrait. Aloma excels at timeless studio portraiture. Writer photographer John Nichols strikes gold with color landscapes. Each has a vein of gold. What should I make art about? People often ask. The answer, put most simply, is what you care about, what you think about. Most people, although they may not be aware of it, have certain trains of thought that are their favored routes through a day, asking yourself, what do I mull about? What do I think about when I'm not thinking about anything else? Can yield some pretty interesting results. Some people think about sex. Some people think about money. Sorry, I always felt like I don't know, like curse words are like non like adult only words. I have a 9-year old and so it's just a habit. Okay, I'll go back into this. Some people think about money, some people think about the murder they read about and read about still in installments in the daily paper. Other people wonder about UFOs, out of body experiences, ESP, what God is like, if there is a God, if there is an afterlife, if truth is always relative, what the market's going to do. Some of us think about welfare mothers, teen pregnancies, class privileges, the power of the media, and yes, the lifestyles of the rich and famous. You may say correctly that all of us think about all of these things, and that may well be true. It remains true that some of these topics are more fun for you than others, say more absorbing, if it is hard to admit that reading about grisly murders or cele- celebrity sex scandals is just plain fun for you. Those habitual lines of thought, those areas of speculation that we rake over again and again, are an excellent guide to what we should write about, paint about, dance about, make movies about, collage about, knit about, etc. It is very important to make art about what we are really interested in, not what we should be interested in. All too often, we aim at writing a script we should write. And when it's done with, that's exactly how it reads, like a noble effort. Well meant, but somehow hollow. The same holds true for dutiful paintings, meals, poems, letters, even curtains. Listen to what Michelle Casal and Stuart Cubley write in Life, Paint, and Passion. To create is to move into the unknown, to move into the mystery of yourself, to have feeling, to awaken buried perceptions, to be alive and free without worrying about the results. But the mind is conditioned to think it wants a nice painting, a nice tree, beautiful scenery. No. Maybe you want monsters. Maybe you want chaos. Maybe you want a mess. Maybe it will feel really good to paint an ugly painting. Maybe that would open your being much more than a masterpiece. All of us has had the experience of watching a movie or episodic television that felt like an exercise in paint by numbers. Similarly, all of us have seen performances by great actors that were technically brilliant but oddly uninhabited. What went wrong, we wonder? On paper, the premise sounded right enough. The formula sounded good. But art is not about formula. Look again at director Martin Ritt's theory about this. Remember, he called it the vein of gold. We are going to be looking for that in us all. But for the moment, let's look at how it functions in a public forum. Our most public art form, the movies. Think again of Robert De Niro. He excels at playing loners or men who bond intensely with other men. We have loved De Niro in Taxi Driver, The Godfather Part 2, The Deer Hunter, Goodfellas, and many other films where he played into the strength as a man's man. Male female films are somehow beside the point for him. Romantic love is simply not De Niro's vein of gold, but male bonding is. Having mentioned Streep, let us look at her multi striped career and how much we enjoy her when she is playing a larger than life heroine with upper class problems, a foreign accent, and a noble, tormented heart. She herself loves doing comedy, but we have not made her a beloved comedian. As fine as her work has been in her turns as a blue collar worker and mother, Silkwood and The River Wild, she was unforgettable as Isaac Dienson in Out of Africa and Sophie in Sophie's Choice. Sophie's Choice brings us back to another brilliant actor, Kevin Kline, a truly great comic actor. For years, he languished in romantic leads, playing very sincere, even syrupy nice guys. Remember him as Sissy Spacek's husband in Violets Are Blue? Perhaps not. Those nice guy roles and those movies never quite gelled. Despite his impeccable technique, the camera never quite loved him as the simple nice guy. Kline may be many things, and a technically marvelous actor is one of them, but uncomplicated nice is not his vein of gold. As his Otto in A Fish Called Wanda made clear, wicked humor is Kline's forte. He is smart, shrewd, and great, especially at the very difficult art of physical comedy. Now that Kline is mining his vein of gold, his career has taken off and acquired some appropriate altitude. Dying is easy, comedy is hard, the old actor's joke runs, and Kline is able to turn his vein of gold to good avail even when the material is less than golden. It was Kline's glittering comic gift, as well as Meg Ryan's Heart of Gold, that made even French Kiss a film we can recall with affection. Writers, painters, potters, photographers, all of us have our vein of gold. Most often, what we enjoy making art about is what we enjoy seeing once it's made, which is about what we enjoy mulling over, whether it's in a news story or a movie, a magazine or a conversation. If you think about a theme a lot, chances are good it's in your vein of gold. How do I know what I think about? You might ask. It's true that we are sometimes so busy thinking about our favorite somethings that we don't even know what they are. What follows is a set of sleuthing techniques for nosing out your vein of gold. Technique one, favorite films. Name 5 favorite films. They can be any films at all, good films, bad films, childhood films, grown up films, recent, classic, or vintage films. Just pick 5 of them, any 5. Here's a sample list. Mine. Number 1, The Ghost and Mrs. Muir, an old British film about fated love. The lovers come from differing circumstances. One lover is alive and well, the other is a ghost. 2, I Know Where I'm Going, another British classic by director Michael Powell, another love story about fated love. This time, one lover is a city girl and the other is a country man. 3, Holiday. Yes, another love story about lovers from differing circumstances. This time, she's an heiress and he's a striver who is set to marry the wrong sister. 4, Always. Steven Spielberg's officially unsuccessful film about, you did guess it, fated love. This time about love surviving past the veil of death. 5, Blythe Spirit. It's another film of love surviving death. That's my list, and yours might be very different. The point is to take whatever 5 films you arrived at off the top of your head and to do a little looking at the list. What are some of the common denominations involved in these films? One way or another, each of my film, sorry, rewind. Okay, one way or another, each of my movies is a period piece. Obviously, I like movies set in another time, another place, and featuring some aspect of being an outsider that forces another way of looking at things. Many of the films center on a belief in the supernatural having a hand in human affairs, fate, and death, figure largely figure largely in all of them. And there are more common denominators. All of my films involve mystery, theological, technological, or physiological. All involve matters of life and death. Yet another favorite film of mine is a different Michael Powell classic, A Matter of Life and Death, featuring, yes, fated lovers, the supernatural, and yes, matters of life and death. Another thing common to my films is that they all involve questions of conventionally held beliefs. Off the top of my head, might equally well have come up with an entirely different list of favorites. 1. Topper. 2. A Guy Named Joe, the source for always. Number 3. Splash. Number 4. The State of the Union, and any number of Hepburn Tracy films featuring mismatched, perfectly matched lovers. Number 5. The Thin Man. Does this list negate my first one? No, not at all. It amplifies and confirms it. Again, these films are all centered on fated lovers from differing circumstances, mystery, and again on death. SEX and death are intertwined, as are questions about fate and afterlife. Even Splash is not so far removed as it might seem. It, like Blythe Spirit, concerns fated love. What do I glean from all this? I learned that I am interested in love and death and the fateful combining of the two. Looking back over my own body of work, which includes 4 full-length plays as well as a dozen screenplays, I see this am, I see this amply borne out. I know what that word means, but I've never actually seen it in writing. Amply. Interesting. Okay. My first play, Public Lives, is a tragic comedy about the afterlife. The hero dies in scene 1. In scene 2, he sits up on his bier and lights a cigarette, and the show goes on. My first film as a writer director, God's Will, opens with the death of the protagonist and then follows their career as a theatrical ghost. The list goes on. There is a twinkle billed by my Hollywood agent as a sort of splash who fell to earth. There is Star-Crossed, a comedy about ill-fated lovers who repeatedly try and fail lifetime to lifetime to solve the same hand-me-down mystery. Comedy or tragedy, the themes remain the same. In A Mile Straight Down, a beloved deceased wife is found to be very much alive and well and living with another man in another country. In short, time after time, in many different guises, I have enjoyed writing about the very things I enjoyed watching and reading about. I am not alone in this. For the past decade, I have taught screenwriting. It is my experience as a teacher that the best scripts always come from those topics closest to the heart. Let me give another list of favorite films, marks for you to practice with. 1. Rocky. 2. An Officer and a Gentleman. 3. It's a Wonderful Life. 4. Ikiru, often called Kurosawa's It's a Wonderful Life. Number 5. The Grapes of Wrath. What themes do you see in common? There's social injustice, the haves versus the have-nots. There's the everyman hero who must overcome his past and his lowly station to save the day. Look closely and you will also see other sub-themes. The true love found only by being true to oneself. You get the idea. Now, not all of the movies will clearly articulate all of the themes, but there will be noticeable repeating patterns. And these repeated patterns are the gleam of the vein of gold. All of my movies are really my own story. Mark says, this is true for all of it, for all of us if we look closely enough. Remember, one more time, we are on the origin and original. Remember, one more time, we are the origin and original. I put in my pictures everything I like, Picasso said. If you read every story written about child abuse, that is a topic for you. If money laundering stories are your regular reading material, they will yield you a lively story on financial shenanigans. If you enjoy looking at lilies and want to paint lilies. What follows is another task to help you begin looking for your vein of gold. Sometimes it helps to enlist a sharp eyed friend in this procedure. Often our own themes are so close to us that we may miss them when we look for them. Task: the Vein of Gold quiz. Number one, name 5 favorite movies. Any 5 love films will do. They can be current or oldies, but goldies. Do not consider this list to be set in stone. Just write it out quickly off the top of your head. Number two, name your favorite childhood book. This book should probably be from your childhood, not one of the books you read to your kids. Number three, name 3 characters you love. Number four, name 3 characters you would love to play. Number five, name 3 topics you think about. Number six, name 3 topics you read about. Seven, what was your childhood book about? 8, what are your movies about? 9, do your movies and books have anything in common? 10, do your characters you're reading, you're thinking, connect up somehow with your movies and your childhood book? Sometimes this quiz can be a little tricky to self administer. You may want to have several friends from your cluster list tell you what common denominators they see in your list. You may want to get together as a group and plan a party around this chapter. By the time you are finished working with this book, this quiz will be more meaningful and resonant to you. Think of this as playing an elaborate game of Clue with yourself. You may also want to look through your quiz for what I call the karmic question. This is an issue, a question, or a concern that you and your favorite characters are working on solving. For example, one film student came up with a film list that involved both The Godfather and the Godfather Part 2, plus Apocalypse Now and Lord of the Flies, and A Clockwork Orange. This student's karmic question involved the proper use of power. He was concerned with issues of cruelty, domination, strength, and weakness. Task: binge reading. This technique involves something delightful for most creatives: binge reading. Before you begin, quickly jot down 5 topics you frequently read on. Include the topics you secretly read on. Then you just list out all 5. Now proceed directly to the supermarket checkout counter and acquire at least 3 rags you would not be caught dead reading. I believe in buying the Inquirer, the Star, the Globe. These papers involve stories where the stakes are hilariously or tragically high. Mother Mary's Son twice. If you must, also buy the New York Times, Newsweek, Time, and People. Take them all home. Lock yourself in your bedroom with a pair of scissors and a red pen and mark, clip, and save any story you find remotely interesting. This should, after a week of binging, yield you quite a collection. Now start sorting. Look for the common denominators in your stories: sex, medicine, money, tragedy, science. Look for the psychological common denominators too: triumph against all odds, betrayal by best friends, victory through perseverance, etc. In short, divide if you can, into topic and theme. This process, done carefully, should yield you a fairly good idea of what it is that strikes you as interesting, and it need strike only you that way. There is no point ever in worrying about whether something will interest only you. If you find it interesting, so will somebody else. This process may well strike some of you as silly, too random, too revelatory. Believe what you will, but try it. Then try it again. Okay. Task. Grab bag collage. Working as rapidly as you can, pull 20 or 30 images from a stack of magazines. Glue these images to a poster board in whatever way feels enjoyable to you. The images do not need to and often don't or won't make sense. They're intended to be very freeform, spontaneous, and top of the mind. You don't need to know why an image appeals to you. It can be a dark image or a light image. Just yank and paste. Do not overthink this exercise and do not read ahead to the next one until you have completed this task. Okay, I'm going to choose to cheat and keep reading just for the purposes of this being on live. So, task matching. No, do not read these instructions until you have completed task 3. You will wreck the game for yourself. Okay. So, psych, never mind. I think that I may actually go do that particular activity because it excited me. In the artist way, I'm not sure if you're watching this if you've read that book already, but she basically says like there's like a whole bunch of tasks to do in every like section of that book, and she says do the ones that excite you the most, the ones that excite you the least, and like all the ones that fall in between, just don't do those, just because basically it would take forever to do all the tasks. And that's how I'm kind of looking at this book too. So since that one actually did excite me, I'm going to stop right here, and then I will come back and read again, and then I'll read Breaking Camp at the same time, and then we'll be done with the Kingdom of Story. It's only like 2 pages left, so yay. Okay, thanks for being here, and bye for now.